Kylie Vandy Wyngaerde and Chris Greer present the immune system. Our body's immune system is the system that protects us from foreign viruses, pathogens, and other harmful infections. Much like our nation's extensive defense system protects us against foreign threats. America. The first line of defense is our border patrol. The skin and mucous membrane make up the border and the patrol. The skin and mucous membrane are the first line of defense, and their job is to protect the body from microbials, infections, and diseases, and to regulate the body's temperature. The Border Patrol's job is to only let people in with the correct documents, the way that the skin and mucous membrane only let in necessary substances with the proper genetic coding. They are similar in the aspect of protecting and only letting things pass by if they meet the requirements. The second line of defense is our general U.S. military. The natural killer cells are very similar to the Army snipers. A sniper's job is to protect the U.S. troops and make sure that nothing harms them. The natural killer cells roam the body and the blood and the lymph. They are encoded to fight and kill off non-specific cancer cells, virus-infected body cells, and other non-specific targets. Phagocytes represent the Army troops. Phagocytes' job is to surround and absorb and destroy waste material, harmful microorganisms, and other foreign bodies in the bloodstream. Similar to the Army's job is to serve and protect our nation and ensure justice and freedom for all by fighting off anything that threatens that. The inflammatory response relates to the communication that the military uses. The inflammatory response reacts to an injury or antigen that causes pain, swelling, redness, heat, or loss of function. The signals are sent around the body to warn about the injury, so that it might respond to it properly. The response begins with a chemical alarm that triggers histamines and kinins that cause capillaries to become leaky and blood vessels to dilate. Much like the inflammatory response, when something or someone has been injured, the Army will send signals to the base to warn them of an attack, and the base will respond with the appropriate reinforcements to treat the problem. The fever is a typical response that the body will give off to fight off an infection. It does so by temporarily raising the body temperature to kill off the pathogens. The fever can be seen as a parallel to the reinforcements that the Army will send when something is in danger and is in need of assistance. The interferon is similar to the reactions that take place when a prisoner of war is taken. When a nearby cell is infected, interferon, a warning protein, is released to warn the other cells to protect themselves and release more protective proteins. Similar to the steps taken by the military when a soldier is taken, they will return and warn the Army of what has happened and take steps of caution to protect themselves. The complement proteins and when the Army calls in an airstrike have very similar characteristics. A complement protein is a substance produced by another newly activated protein in reaction to foreign antigens in the bloodstream. It helps fight off foreign bodies with a complement reaction that raises body temperature, dilates blood vessels, and causes the area to swell. When the Army calls in an airstrike, it is due to an overrunning of harmful enemies, and the airstrike is used to defend and support the Army in the fight the way that the proteins defend and support the infected areas.
The third line of defense are the special operatives. The humoral response is the branch of the immune system that fights specific threats through the use of specific direct antigen detection by B cells. It consists of the immature stage of the B cell's life in which it detects specific antigens, engulfing them and using them as signals. The second part of the B cell maturation is the formation of specific B cells, plasma, and memory. Since this response system follows the cells throughout their whole process and trains them to fully mature, it is most like the special training operatives are subject to. The basic antigen detection process can be seen as early training for an immature cell, while the second part, in which the cell matures, can be seen as a special training and an assignment for their specific special role. The immature B cells represent the new recruits in the training going through boot camp we call humoral process. At the beginning of the humoral response process, immature B cells locate and bind with foreign antigens that threaten the body. They then engulf the antigens and break them up into fragments that they present on their outer surface to alert nearby T cells to begin their job, serving the role as antigen-presenting T cells for the T cells. Like the new recruits who are still in training and be considered immature, the immature B cells are still haven't attained their full function at this early point in the humoral response process. As we mentioned, the B cells attain their full maturity in the second stage of humoral response, in which they are signaled to clone and mature into either memory cells or plasma cells. Plasma cells serve the specific purpose of producing specific virus-fighting antibodies. Since they ultimately create and direct the killers, the antibodies, in the third line of defense, they can be seen as the handlers, or the boss, of professional assassins. These professional assassins, then, fall to be the antibodies. After being produced and released by the plasma cell, they enter the blood and lymph where they target specific antigens that they were formed to fight. So, for example, an antibody coded to fight a lung cancer antigen will not perform the task of neutralizing and destroying an HIV virus. Similar in function are undercover assassins. When assigned to a specific task or given a specific target, they will carry out their duty without fail. They also, like the antibody, will target a specific target and not stray from their assignment. The second type of mature B cell that results in the final stages of humoral response is the memory cell. Like the intelligence sector of the special forces that keep all the data on national threats, the memory cells retain acquired information on viruses that the immune system has encountered so as to better combat it when it is encountered again. Cell-mediated response is very similar to the tactics that are used when the special ops forces attack. The cell-mediated response is produced when the T cells attack foreign antigens and secrete lymphokine that will initiate the humoral response. Once the response is produced, it helps control the attack on the foreign antibodies. This is similar to the tactics used by special ops troops to control and guide the way of the battle. The T cells can be seen as the spies that the Army uses to recognize enemies. However, they aren't activated until an antigen-presenting cell does its job. The antigen-presenting cell is like the radar that is used by the Special Forces to spot enemies. An antigen-presenting cell displays the foreign antibodies so the T cells can recognize them and start to attack, much like how a radar helps the forces spot the targets and neutralize them quicker and easier. There can be various types of cells, including B cells and macrophages, and just as radar is extremely important in facilitating the Special Forces' job, without the APC, 80% of immune cell function would not work as efficiently, or not at all. There are 4 types of T cells. The first 2 are helper T cells and cytotoxic T cells. Like we said, each T cell is like a spy that the Army uses to recognize enemies. The T cells examine the evidence shown by the APC when it comes into contact with the APC and recognizes the foreign antibody. The T cell releases specialized forces to help fend off the foreign antibody. These are the helper T cells. The helper T cells then recognize the foreign antibody and release cytotoxic T cells, which stimulate the B lymphocytes. Similarly to the tactics that a spy would use when finally recognizing the target and starts to take the correct methods of attack of a certain target. The next type of T cell is a regulatory T cell. They are a lot like the armor and life support that the Special Forces use. Regulatory T cells regulate the immune system, maintain tolerance to self-antigens, and repeal autoimmune disease. The way that the regulatory T cell protects us from such things is very similar to the way that the armor and life support help the Special Forces to perform their fullest capacity during battle and keeps them well protected. The final type of T cell is a memory T cell. The memory T cells can be compared to the veterans of the Special Forces. The memory T cells are a group of cancer-fighting T cells that have previously encountered and responded to their cognate antigen. They have the memory of what to do and how to fight off the foreign antibody, just as the veterans of the Special Forces have their training in memory. This completes the immune system,